The administration of the twice impeached, criminally convicted felon and con man Donald Trump is pretty stupid. And when I say stupid, I mean really stupid. So they sent out this memo freezing federal funds, which actually is illegal. There's nothing that says they have the power to do so. And so folks went to court. Federal judge agreed with them. Then today, these idiots tried to send out a second memo saying, no, you know what? Scratch that. This really applies to these different groups. But then they got even more stupid because their, youngest ever press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, that dumbass then goes, this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It's simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction. The president's EO on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. Well, guess what? That dumbass earned them a restraining order. Go to my iPad. This is from Politico Story. The judge here, federal judge, says, I'm inclined to grant the restraining order. I fear that the administration is acting with a distinction without a difference. That's how dumb these folks are. And what has happened is the confusion is impacting folks in every single area, intended or unattended, if you want to suggest that. And so as a result, and they really are focusing on DEI, anything dealing with the issue of race, critical race theory, you name it, that's what they are constantly attacking. Well, guess what? If the freeze is reinstated, funding to Black cultural studies at HBCUs could be at risk, as these programs rely on federal funds. Dr. Leslie Baskerville, the CEO of the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Higher Education, joins me now. Leslie, glad to have you back on the show. Dr. Walter Kimbrough, who was the interim president in Alabama at school there. It's very interesting. He said it's a little hard to be an HBCU and not bring up Black history. And so this attack on DEI by these nutcases, this attack on critical race theory, anything dealing with race, could have a serious impact on the federal funds that HBCUs receive, correct?
Yes, it could have. I don't believe it will have, not under the current circumstances, because the Constitution reserves to the United States Congress appropriations and authorization authority, and the president can't override that by executive order. So I think it's really unfortunate that we're having to go through these time-consuming, confusing challenges in court. But I'm confident that we'll win, whether the judge is appointed by Trump or anyone else. That's clear, and Republican members and Democratic members hold on to that. It's a coveted responsibility. Budget was passed before Congress, and he can't override that with an executive order.
But Leslie, we're not dealing with someone who actually cares about the law.
He doesn't care.
And Republicans are consistently unwilling to challenge him on his lawlessness.
Yeah, that's true. And so it makes it even harder and more expensive. But there's another important factor here when we talk about DEI. Unlike Hispanic serving institutions and Asian Pacific Islander institutions, even predominantly Black institutions, HBCUs are not minority serving institutions. Since their founding, they have been mission-based institutions. They're mission-based institutions like the military, colleges, and universities. There's no race and no ethnicity criterion. There has never been any instance in which they had to have a certain number of white people, a certain number of Asian Pacific Islanders. because of their mission, because of the areas in which they excel. They're the growth and high need areas, and particularly in STEM, where they're graduating 42% of Blacks and other underrepresented minorities with advanced degrees in STEM. People are coming. So we now have about 30% non-African ancestry and 70% African ancestry people. And so when you say DEI, we should not cede that.
But here's the deal, though, Leslie. We know what's going on here. When these white folks say DEI, they are going, oh, that's black, knowing full well that the greatest beneficiaries of DEI jobs as well as affirmative action have been white women. And so these people are not smart. They don't think that way. And here's a perfect example. Go to my iPad. Look, Rutgers University canceled an HBCU conference as a result of this. In this conference, it was through the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions, said it was asked to cease all work it was performing under the auspices of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Hub at Jobs for the Future, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor. And so here's a perfect example. HBCUs are not solely for African Americans. They're just like, they're frankly, just like PWIs. It's a historical distinction, but let's be real clear. The people who wrote Project 2025, that's what this is all about, and HBCUs should worry because these people are crazy.
Yeah, they are crazy. But I want to just take a slight issue with the fact that they're just like PWIs, with predominantly white institution, Hispanics, Asian Pacific Islander institutions. There is a specific criterion in the definition that a certain percentage of their student body is Hispanic, Asian Pacific Islander, and predominantly Black. So there's a specific race criterion along with an economic criterion. A certain percentage of them have to be low income, and the institutions have to be underfunded. That's their definition. HBCUs are mission-based.
No. Follow me. When I say they're the same, what I mean is, if you're a white student, no. What I'm saying is, if you're a white student or a Black student or Latino or Asian Native American, and if you apply to an HBCU, it's no different if you're applying to a PWI. So what I'm saying is, it's a college, it's a university. So that's what I mean by there's no difference. I understand the definition, and I understand mission. But what I'm saying is, if you choose to apply to one of those schools, you can apply. You're not going to be barred from that school, because of your race. And so that's what I mean by that. But we're dealing with these people who, many of them, first of all, they can't spell HBCU. I guarantee you they've never been to one. They have no understanding about the federal designation. But the most important thing, all they see is the B in HBCU, which is Black. Right.
So, we've had one successful case, and I led it on behalf of the HBCUs when a number of years ago, the Department of Commerce was directed to shut down its small disadvantaged and female business program. And earlier, I had written into that law that the private HBCUs, small private HBCUs that met the definition of small disadvantaged businesses, and there were quite a few, should be written into the law. When they set the law aside, then I came back and said, no, they're not small disadvantaged in the sense of having any race criterion. And we won. They took us out at that level, and that was an administrative judge. But they're tiers of government. And Roland, I agree with you. And I think we've never had a time like this, or someone who's so unbridled, unhinged, unaware, or unrespectful of the tripartite system and the laws and so forth. And so that makes the battle harder. But as long as we've been fighting, and with the folks that HBCUs have prepared and other institutions, and those who've been prepared on the streets and the lines, picket lines and so forth, we have the tools to fight. We have the tools to win. And one of the things that we've been doing, quite frankly, knowing that he was coming, is to put in place an infrastructure so that his HBCU students in particular, initially, when the FAFSA challenge would come up, and then all students can go online and sign up to the social media wealth building so that we don't have to continue to be overly reliant on government. I want every tax dollar we're entitled to. So don't get me wrong. I want our fair share and then somebody else if they'll give it to us. But so that we have options. These students can earn up to $300,000 on average. And that was in the test of the concept over 17 years, simply by going on and doing what students do. Click on and stay on social media. And so we're trying to create options while we're going after every dollar that we have. And we're not winning much. The courts are obviously stacked, and they're going to be stacked even heavier in a minute. But we're going to keep challenging them. The other thing is this. Trump and his shadow folks understand money. So HBCUs, mission-based institutions, 3% of American colleges and universities, they're graduating 42% of Blacks with advanced degrees in STEM. And his three immediate shadow co-presidents have as their top agenda item things having to do with STEM, with technology. And being one in the world seems to be more important to this president than being just and fair and equitable and comporting with any laws, regulations, policies, executive orders. And so they should understand that they can't get the America that they want without HBCUs. And let me tell you what happened. I don't know if it was by design or just sloppiness, because the whole thing is really sloppy. When in the executive order, the OMB decided which programs were going to be cut, they specifically mentioned Hispanic serving institutions and tribal colleges and universities, did not mention HBCUs. And I called OMB and I called people at the Department of Education. Their position now is that was not a mistake. But the question is why? Tribal colleges are non-racial too. So if you're going to exclude all of the non-racials, why were tribal colleges included? But it's a big mess, but I live to fight for justice. I've been doing it since I was 14. That's all I know. I get excited in the morning and doing that. And it's unfortunate that the clock has been turned so far back. The voting rights have been trammeled. Employment rights have been trammeled. Health rights, on and on. And justice, you let thugs and murderers out of jail and prison in mass. But we're up to the task, and we're not going to allow it to sit. And if there's any judge before whom we can get, there's no question, but the actions, these actions are in flagrant violation of the Constitution. And I think you can get a small number, but a number of Republicans to go along because they value the appropriations responsibilities, and that's what they can take home to their constituents.
Going to be prepared for the craziness that is going to ensue. Leslie Baskerville, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
I thank you so much for allowing me to be here, and look forward to working with you and the colleagues there as we do push back. Have a glorious day.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Go to my panel here. Mondale, I want to start with you. I mean, listen. Folk better be prepared. And bottom line is, it's a lot of people who are sleepwalking. And what pisses me off is I'm tired of hearing these people go, oh, my God, I can't believe this. And I'm like, dumbasses, we told you. They told you. It's in Project 2025. Trump lied by saying, I don't know anything about this here. I don't even want to know about it. I didn't even read it. They were lying the entire time. But I don't understand why people don't realize that they are going to go after anything and everything that says black or race or whatever.
Yeah, listen, let's be clear. We watched this president tell us through his whole life, not just when he was running as a political candidate. His entire life, he's been anti-black. So anybody believing that him running for office, the last time that he could run from office and getting elected, that he was not going to be even more anti-black, even more empowered by whiteness when white people put him in that place, I think they're being fanciful at best, and I can think of some more colorful words that better describe them. This whole HBCU thing's really got me really stressed out, mainly because I think people forget that, like your past commentator was just talking about, that's a lot of people attending HBCUs. Nearly 25% of the people that go to HBCU are non-black students. And hell, you got 8 schools where over half of them, HBCUs, where over half of the student population are not something other than black. Hell, you even got 2 in West Virginia where the population are either 90 or 80% white. West Virginia State and Bluefield State. So this is the unseriousness at which we are writing policies, so much so that we are willing to throw poor white people out with black people just to make sure that we make sure black people understand their position in life. And anybody, any black Republican, any black person that voted for Trump, any black person that has something negative to say about what Kamala was offering, they're not really serious about what it takes to be standing up for black people. And I mean that because we've watched every day, 9 days straight, where something was written, and even if it didn't say black people, it was anti-black. The 14th Amendment, the erasing all the gains from the 1965 Civil Rights Act, and we can go on and on. The ensuring police officers that are going to get unqualified immunity, which means they can do whatever they want to in our communities, kill black men at rates that they want to without being checked.
Right.
I promise you, if so much wasn't going on, I bet you Chauvin would be free if it was a federal charge.
Well,
people are sitting here pretending that we are not under attack and that they didn't know it.
Right.
It's going to be this serious.
So
people are not serious about our folk and their folk too.
So here's the thing, Joy, that we have to understand again. If you are an institution, if you are a group, I don't care what it is, if you have any federal funds, if you have a business that receives federal funds, you had better be on guard, because these people, they want to go after everything and they want to absolutely cripple Black America.
Correct. And let's be clear, it's not just Black America. I know that's our focus here, but it is women. It is Native Americans.
No. Here's the deal. No. When we say women, it's white women. Let's be real clear.
What I'm saying, Roland, what I'm telling you is I'm on a board of an organization that just had their efforts that were aimed at sexual harassment in the workplace, that was brought back.
No, I understand. What I'm saying is, when you say black, sisters are under that. So I want to specifically challenge white women because they act like they're not a part of this. But go ahead.
Correct. White women do act like they're not a part of it, but they're fools for it. They are coming for everything that does not benefit white, heterosexual,
men,
cisgendered men. That is what Judeo-Christian at that. That is their focus. So even if you think that that you're going to be protected, you are not going to be protected. You are not going to be protected. And they are testing out with DEI. And by the way, in the federal government, those offices are not just diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you are a person with a disability, those are also accessibility offices. This is really important. They are testing out to see what they can do.
Yeah.
And when it happens and no one pushes back, or not enough people push back, then they go farther. That's what happened this week. They started with DEI. And then later in the week, they cut all the funding. Yeah,
I'll tell you this here, Erica, and this is the thing that I think, again, folk need to understand. The people who are going to push back, and this is where, when you talk about fighting it in the courts, it's going to be the Democratic attorneys generals and the governors. They're going to have to lead the legal charge. Frankly, the folks in D.C., I don't know what the hell they're doing. They are $5 late and 5 days short. I mean, I've never seen folk react so damn slow to what's going on. But again, when New York Attorney General Tish James announced the first one to launch a lawsuit over the freezing of the funds, and other Democratic Attorney Generals jumped in, guess what? Not a single Republican Attorney General said a word, even though those broke-ass red states get the most money from the federal government. So that is what you're going to see. You're going to have a legal onslaught led by Democratic governors and attorneys generals.
Absolutely. Executive leadership is definitely pertinent at this time. And speaking of AG Letitia James, shout out to her. She was one of the first ones to retweet over to talk about, listen, we coming for you. You will see us in court. That is the type of leadership that we always need. And you're talking about the number one and the number two group, which is, Black men and Black women. We are the ones that really fought for democracy, that are continuing to fight, particularly in these times. But let's be very clear about what we're seeing. We're seeing, again, what we've been talking about on this show for the past 7 years, but we're also seeing the policies. We're also seeing the mating call that was released back in February of 2017 by Stephen Bannon across the water from us here in Maryland, where at the CPAC convention, where he said at that time that their goal was to deconstruct the administrative state. And they are here in 2025 to do that. You have a Stephen Miller, who is an all-out Nazi, a nationalist, who is the deputy chief policy head in the White House. And so anywhere that he is able to see any remnants, anything that has Black in it, he's going after it. So I think that for those that were in the space of not believing what has been talked about, what was actually written, what was actually made watered down into 30, 90-second snippets where people could actually get the information of what was going to happen if he was able to, meaning the son of a Klansman was able to get back behind that desk at 1600 Black Lives Matter Plaza, which we know that address will change very quickly. But this is what he would do. And so now it is incumbent upon people to make sure that not only are they calling their senators and lighting people up here in D.C., but to also be in support of those Democratic AGs and governors that are being about the business of taking this illegal regime to task.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.
Folks, you've heard me say this time and time again, and I'll say it right now. Ain't no millionaires and billionaires contributing to our show. Even the Black ones. Do you have major advertisers who are spending their ad dollars with us? Absolutely not. Because the agencies say that, well, we don't do news. We can't do news. But I see these ads on Fox News. I see the ads on CNN. I see them on MSNBC. And there were people who literally said, oh, no, this ain't going to work. This is going to fail. Here we are 6 years and 4 months later, 1.58 million followers, started with 157,000. But it's also because of our fan base who contributed. 10,000 people watching live just on YouTube. More on our app, more on YouTube and the other places where we stream. And it's a lot of people. And they're people who I know personally, people who call and ask me to do favors, who don't even contribute to the show. There are people I've seen on social media talk about how we got to build our own ecosystem, support our own, who don't actually do it. My man Michael Harriot used to be with The Root, launched something called Contraband Camp. Last night, I signed up, $59.99 for a year. Because I can't say we need more black media, and I can't say that, but then I don't actually support it. Other people who I've actually poured into, invested in. So when I ask you to join us, there are people who are in our YouTube chat who are joining in. We don't charge a subscription fee. There's no minimum amount we charge you. Because the goal that we wanted is for this to be open so people can be able to access it. I was walking through the Atlanta airport when I arrived on Tuesday and I left on Wednesday. And so many brothers and sisters stopped me and they said, man, I'm watching your show. I'm listening to the podcast. Thank you. Keep going, keep going, keep going. But y'all, I say it all the time. We cannot keep going if we can't fund it. The lease of our office is up next year. It's going to be an increase. When we talk about staff, there are some positions that we would love to fill. Today, we actually shot 2 pilots of a show that I would love to launch. And we're going to run those shows in the next 2 weeks. There are 2 of the shows that we're planning pilots on. That's going to cost money for the people producing and working it and for the people who are hosting the show. Because I'm not saying please work for free. But we are not going to be able to have voices that speak for us if we don't support those platforms. So I do what I'm asking you to do. I literally support other black-owned media platforms because we need more of the voices than just me. I'm just one person. But I want to create Black Star Network to create more Black Stars. I want to be able for us to have 6, 8, 10 different shows hosted by Millennial, Gen Z, and other Gen Xers. I tried to do a show with a Generation Alpha, but the ask of his daddy was so outlandish that I said, there's no way I can even do that. But there are others who I'm looking at. Oh yes, when I travel the country, I'm paying attention and I'm looking at people who are 12 and 14 and 15 years old and watching them saying, how can I support what they're doing and build the next generation? So when we ask you to support us, when I say we want 20,000 people on average giving $50 each, which comes out to $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day, y'all, that's $1 million. That $1 million from those folks is huge. Brother hit me today. He said, man, I've been talking about contributing. He said, I finally did it today. He contributed $250. There's some other people I saw, they contributed $10. Somebody contributed $1.08. That 8 cents matters just like it was $800. It all adds up. So what we do here is what nobody else in black-owned media is doing. We are trying to build a network of multiple voices that will speak to our people in a way to serve as giving the clarion call to justice, to truth, to honesty, to decency, the people who are going to cast the vision. And we need you to say, like the people did to Nehemiah, let us rebuild. I would love for all the people who are watching, would love for today for us to raise $100,000. If 2,000 people gave $50, and there's 10,000 of y'all on YouTube right now, we hit that easy. You can't give us direct on the Cash App because they shut down our accounts. So you can use Stripe. This is the QR code. I posted the link directly in the YouTube chat. But if you want to use Cash App for Stripe, it's right here. This QR code, if you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com. If you want to give via PayPal, PayPal is paypal.me/rmartinunfiltered. Venmo is venmo.com/rmunfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com, roland@rolandmartinunfiltered.com. If you want to be old school, so your checking money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196.
Last night, President Trump plunged the country into chaos. Without a shred of warning, the Trump administration announced a halt to virtually all federal funds across the country. In an instant, Donald Trump has shut off billions, perhaps trillions of dollars that directly support states, cities, towns, schools, hospitals, small businesses, and most of all, American families. This is a dagger at the heart of the average American family in red states, in blue states, in cities, in suburbs, in rural areas. It is just outrageous.
Just outrageous. The twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald the Con Trump is a new order could impact billions, if not trillions of dollars of funding allocated to state and local government if it goes back to in effect on Monday. U.S. District Court Lauren Ali Khan blocked the action Tuesday afternoon, minutes before it was set to go into effect at 5 p.m. The administrative stay pauses the freeze until Monday. Bobby Kogan, the Senior Director of Federal Budget Policy at the Center for American Progress, joins us to discuss who may be affected by this decision. Bobby, how are you doing?
Doing great, Robert. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, thank you so much. Talk a little bit about who exactly this order, this executive order would impact if it was to go into effect on Monday.
Sure. So it is, they say it's not Medicare, it's not Social Security, and it's not payments that go directly to individuals. So that means not something like SSI and not something like veterans compensation, but it's much of the rest of the aid that the United States government gives. That's stuff like Section 8 housing, that's stuff like LIHEAP, that's stuff like Title I education grants, that's stuff like IDEA education grants for kids with disabilities. It's most of the things that people actually are relying on. Now, the asterisk here is that after kind of spelling out over 2,000 budget accounts, externally, the Trump administration walked it all back. And so their internal messaging implies that it's lots and lots and lots and lots of programs that Americans rely on. And their external messaging implies that it's nothing.
And so, as we've seen before, when President Trump was running for office, he said, I know nothing about Project 2025. I've heard nothing about Project 2025. I don't know who these people are or what's happening. But this is directly out of Project 2025. So should we believe their external messaging that we saw at the White House briefing today, or believe the internal documents which truly say they want to gut these federal programs?
I think we should believe the internal messaging. If you look at the budget request that Trump made when he was president last time, he called to eviscerate the social safety net. He called to cut SNAP in quarter. He called to cut Section 8 in third. He called to cut Medicaid in half, right? So they clearly want to do this. Whether their walk back is all a show or they got scared and wanted to lie about their initial policy, I think is a different thing. But it's very, very, very clear that externally they were feeling the heat. But to your point, I think that we should assume, and we had, there were reports today of states logging in and not being able to get their Medicaid money for the upcoming quarter. There were pauses on Head Start grants and that sort of stuff. So it's very clear that they were working towards pausing huge amounts of the federal government.
And what we've seen thus far with these 300 executive orders plus that were still coming down the pipelines is it seems that they're attempting to flood the zone. That if you throw enough crazy things out there minute by minute, hour by hour, there will not be enough money for lawyers to challenge every single one of these executive orders in court. There will not be the scrutiny to be able to dive into each of these things because before you get through one, another crazy thing is going on. What can people actually do to fight back against these orders, and what does this administrative stay mean?
Yeah, I think that that's astute, right? I mean, the common theme of the Trump administration, the thing that runs through all of it is chaos for the American public. I'm not sure what an individual can do per se. That if there are missed payments, any of the agencies or states or facilities that misses the payments will know, and then they will sue. And that will presumably put another stay, right? So you referenced the federal judge today who put a pause on it, but just through Monday. That's kind of fortuitous for the Trump administration for stays because February 1st, the beginning of the month, would have been a huge period of a lot of federal outlays. So you'll have to wait for someone to get standing due to a missed payment, and then that person can sue. I would just say if you're listening and you are not getting a benefit you are supposed to get right now, I strongly encourage you to talk to your local reps and also to your district offices for your federal reps, because right now part of the issue is it's very difficult to understand what is going on. The chaos, the uncertainty is a feature rather than a bug.
And from a constitutional perspective, Chuck Schumer said it earlier, Congress has the power of the purse strings. When the president takes his oath of office, he raises his right hand and says, I will support and defend the Constitution. I will dutifully carry out the edicts of Congress. Does the president have the power? Does he have the ability to simply say, I'm not going to distribute money which has already been passed by the Congress, signed into law, and put forward?
No, he does not. If the president doesn't like this spending, there's actually a special path that's filibuster proof. It's easier to pass than a normal bill to help rescind and peel back unused funds. Right? If a president doesn't like a law, you can try to change the law. But what you're not allowed to do is simply ignore a law that you don't like. What you're not allowed to do is just not carry it out. Now, I will quickly say there are paths to legally pause spending. But President Trump did not take those. He didn't take them when he was in office in 2019 and illegally paused Ukraine funding, and he didn't take them this time, right? So what we see is a direct willingness to flagrantly violate our spending laws.
And on that point, he knows he can't do this. He knows he can't suspend the 14th Amendment when it comes to birthright citizenship. He knows he can't do many of these things. But what is the plan for people and for parties and groups to really fight back against this besides paying lawyers exorbitant fees to go before federal courts? And then as a codicil, we have so many judges that President Trump appointed. Is there a chance that a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, if it gets that far, may just decide to give him these additional powers?
I would be skeptical if the Impoundment Control Act is overturned. What President Trump is pushing is radical even for him. Now, of course, I say that, and then every week he comes out with another even more radical executive order. But the argument behind what he is trying to say is that spending and only spending laws are optional, and that Congress may not bind the president to spend. And what that would mean is that Social Security is unconstitutional. What that would mean is Medicaid is unconstitutional. What that would mean is Medicare is unconstitutional. It would mean that when you are owed your Social Security check, the president always has the option to say, no, I don't feel like giving it to you. That is a really radical legal belief, and that is what has to kind of undergird the idea that the president is always able to impound, right? He argues that the president has inherent impoundment authority, and that has to mean that the president can't bind any spending. I can't imagine the Supreme Court saying all of our entitlement law, all of our spending law is unconstitutional. That is a bridge very far. Now, will some Supreme Court justices say that? I'm sure some will, but I am maybe I'm too naive here, but I don't think that we will see it overturned.
I agree. And look, I want to be as optimistic as you, but I think we all said Roe was settled law. I think we all thought that the North Carolina, the Harvard cases on schools, that was settled law and affirmative action. So for people who are looking at this and trying to find out what are the steps going forward, can you talk a little bit about what happens if this administrative stay fails on Monday and this goes into effect? What will happen to individuals who are depending on many of these services like Meals on Wheels and other government programs?
Yeah. So by virtue of it starting back up on the 3rd rather than the 1st, there will be kind of a little bit of respite. Basically, they're targeting funds that get administered by other things. The federal government will give money to a state or to an authority or to a facility, and then they will carry it out. And so it's not that they can't continue to give out funds, it's that the federal government may not give out any more. So what we're looking at is when the federal government would miss the timing of a payment. Many payments come out at the beginning of the month, some come out quarterly, some come out annually, some come out when grants are due. So we are looking for something whose, we're targeting something for when a payment ought to have gone out, but now because of this illegal order is not able to go out. And so we will only start to see the effect when kind of that first missed payment happens. And so it'll be program by program, right? Eventually, if this were to go on long enough, eventually this stops huge swaths of the federal government. But basically, it would start slow, and beginning of every month would be one thing. And then while some of these facilities have cash reserves, so even if they missed a federal payment, they'd be able to keep going for days, weeks. But the longer this goes on, that's when you start to see childcare facilities and preschool facilities. That's when you start to see them literally shut down. That's when you start to see people being evicted from their homes because they're missing all of their Section 8 payments and can no longer meet their rent.
And so with the new press secretary went into great detail to talk about the programs that wouldn't be cut or wouldn't be affected by this spending freeze. What programs specifically will be affected so that people have a better understanding? We talked about Meals on Wheels, we talked about Section 8, but what are some things where people are going to tangibly feel the effects of this?
Yeah, so just to say, the press secretary is taking the public view that, oh, we didn't mean anything that we said. So that's where we have to, if you take the press secretary's view, then we're only talking about some of the green energy things and the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, and we're only talking, we're only kind of talking about those. That's what they said publicly. What they said privately is that it is much larger. So for the tangible effects for people, that would be your free or cheap preschool is now closed and you are no longer able to get that. That will be your school lunch that you get from school. There's no more funding for the school from the federal government. So maybe you just don't get that because maybe the school can no longer provide it, and the state and your local school district can no longer provide it, right? So it kind of depends on whether private entities are able to step in and fill the void. But the tangible effects, if this goes on long enough and is as broad as they implied it would be, and that their private messaging says it would be, it is stuff like your nutrition, it is stuff like your education, it is some of your healthcare, your community health centers and stuff like that, and it is some of your housing.
And so before we run out of time, where can people get more information on this and really keep up with what's going on? Because we've seen Facebook has gotten rid of fact checking. Twitter has gotten rid of fact checking. There's so much misinformation coming out, disinformation. And we've got the press secretary who apparently now can just pick the media that they want to have at press conferences. I don't know how many people saw that earlier, but they announced that they will now be having podcasters, bloggers, conspiracy theorists be in the White House press corps. So it's very difficult to discern what the actual information is and how exactly we can address it. Where can people get accurate information from, and what can people do to fight back? I think that's the biggest concern folks have.
Sure. I put out a paper, or it should be out in minutes if it's not already. It's my attempt at trying to explain all of this. I would just say there's been tons of reporting from the Washington Post and the New York Times, from Politico, from lots of groups that are trying to lift it up. The difficulty is just no one really knows what's happening. In terms of what you can do to fight back, it's going to sound like cold comfort, but I truly, truly think the best thing that we can be doing is, to the extent that we are missing a payment that we know we are supposed to get, we should be flagging that for journalists, for our local elected representatives or whatever. Right now, the biggest advantage that the that Trump has, that the Trump administration has, is the chaos. No one really knows what's happening, and anytime we say this is happening, they say no, it's not. So that to the extent that you are actually experiencing something, getting that to someone who can help elevate it is actually incredibly, incredibly helpful.
And just last question, we talked a lot about the fact that this is the real Project 2025 coming to fruition. This is what as Roland would say, we tried to tell you that this was what's going to happen. For the people who are out there saying, well, Kamala is Indian and not black enough, well, now you might not have Meals on Wheels and Section 8 housing. But with that, what are the next Project 2025 executive orders that you think might be coming down the pipes?
Well, I'm a budget person, so speaking just in my issue area, I expect to see even broader impoundment. I expect to see even broader kind of, they've been doing trial balloons. On day one, they did kind of pretty targeted, what they thought would be politically advantageous, illegal pauses in spending. And that also comes straight from Project 2025, where they said, we're not going to spend on the stuff that we don't like. We're just going to have it follow the president's policy. they did trial balloons, and then they did this big one, and then they immediately walked it back. I expect to see a lot more of that coming through. But again, that's just my issue area. And so for the other stuff, I don't feel super comfortable opining.
Well, I think it's something we have to watch, and if they are able to take the power of the purse string away from Congress and move it into the executive, we are fundamentally in a different form of government than what our founders said. I grew up with conservatives saying we want less power in the executive. We want small government. We want power to be more democratically with the Congress and with the people. And as soon as they get into power, all that goes out the window. I tell people all the time, don't listen to the flowery language. Watch the actions that people are taking. Thank you so much, Bobby, for joining us. How can people follow you on social media?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm on Blue Sky, and it is BBKOGAN. And for now, I'm still on the bad site, but mostly I'm on Blue Sky.
All right, Bobby Hogan from the Center for American Progress. Let's go to our panel. Today, we're joined by Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA from Washington, D.C. Benjamin Dixon, pastor, political commentator, and author of God is Not a Republican out of my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. And also Dr. Larry J. Walker, assistant professor at the University of Central Florida, joining us from Orlando, Florida. So we got to work our way through some of these executive orders. I'm going to start with you, Mustafa. You know, you worked in the environmental protection. You are an expert in these things, and these are the exact programs that he's going after. What do you think it says that he is attacking these particular programs when he said he was running to lower the price of eggs and milk?
Well, what it says is that he's willing to put profit over people. He's willing to actually put our most vulnerable communities in the crosshairs of these executive orders, of taking these needed resources away from communities that have always been under-resourced. And it's just saying that, whether it is a matter of you getting sick or losing your life, it is not of great concern to what's going on. I mean, I think we got to also give a shout out to Judge Leo Khan for, the stay that's currently going on. And making sure that giving people enough time to actually take a quick breath so that folks don't just get caught up in the chaos. But we know that communities all across the country, when you look at what they're actually doing here, you can think about Flint, Michigan, because they're talking about taking dollars away from water infrastructure, or Jackson, Mississippi, or a number of other communities out there that are literally, in many instances, just hanging on when it comes to what they're drinking or what they're breathing. So we have a responsibility to, one, stay focused, to make sure, as Bobby shared with us earlier, that we're calling out if resources are not making it to the places and spaces they're supposed to and when they're supposed to. And then the most important thing also is that making sure that we are elevating the message, the stories about how people are being impacted across the country based upon these decisions. We got $1.1 trillion in grants that are out there, usually on a yearly basis, and $750 billion in contracts. And when you start playing around like this, we know who's going to be hit first and worst, but you also are going to create all kinds of really just devastating impacts to both working class folks, the middle class, and of course our most vulnerable.
And Dr. Walker, I want to bring you on this conversation because we've been telling people about the dangers of Project 2025 for nearly 2 years. We've had specials on it, town halls, we've sent out mailers, conversations. People seem to be completely surprised that Donald Trump is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. So what do you think has to happen for people to understand that this is the Project 2025 agenda and then start formulating plans on how to fight back against it?
Yeah, I think this is a really important point. You're right. Roland talked about this in great deal throughout the United States, among other people who care, passionately about how, various policies and issues impact the Black community. And so a lot of this is too late, right? You talked about your previous guest about, what kind of entities are in place to kind of fight back against some of these policy changes. But I think there are a couple things that we need to consider based on the election and where we are right now. Is that what you're seeing is an erosion of the three branches of government. We talk about executive, judiciary, and legislative. What you're seeing is, undercutting the power of the legislative and judicial branches and strengthening the power of the executive branch. Also, what we're seeing here is essentially when it comes to the federal government, eliminating it as the elimination of the administrative state. And I think people need to understand that. And that's what we're seeing today in terms of people don't consider how the federal government impacts their lives for billions and trillions of dollars on a daily basis. But now you're beginning to find out this is destroying the federal government as administrative state, as in terms of what's been appropriated in this case by Congress, and now holding that money back. And the long-term impact is going to, short and long-term impact is going to have on American citizens and also the U.S. economy. Because now we're talking about eggs, eliminating Head Start and various other programs, or at least pausing it, will prevent parents, et cetera, from going to work and stimulating the economy. So this is about a shock and awe. And for those of us who not only study, U.S. history, but world history, this playbook has already been written over the decades. And so if you understand how authoritarianism works, understand that the shock and awe is all part of a multiple step process. In addition, we talked about Project 2025. They've literally had years, and the Heritage Foundation has been working on this for decades, to lay out a plan if we ever come in power with the right person in place. And so now, once again, the dismantling of the federal government as administrative state has begun. So it's not about whether systems are buckling. They've already buckled.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now, we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $6.65 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.
Many folks are doing their autopsies examining why did Vice President Kamala Harris lose to Donald Trump the 2024 presidential election. There are a variety of reasons. The Democrats stay at home. They weren't interested in voting for her over the issue with Gaza. It was the price of eggs and groceries. But investigative journalist Greg Palast, he says, no, voter suppression is the reason. And the fact of the matter is she could have easily won if it wasn't for that. He joins us right now. Greg, welcome back to the show. So walk us.
I'll be with you, Roland.
Walk us through what your research has determined.
Okay, it's real simple. In fact, if you go to gregpalast.com, you can get all the numbers so you don't have to keep your calculator and a pen next to you while I tell you what's going on. For those who, by the way, don't know me, Greg Palast, I'm an investigative reporter. I'm especially I'm known as a data journalist. I got the Global Editors Award for that. That means I'm a detective with a pen, and I used to work for the U.S. Justice Department and Attorneys General. My degree is in forensic economics. Why am I telling you all these things? Because I'm going to give you a lot of numbers, and you better believe them instead of the junk you're hearing from mainstream press. Here's what happened to Kamala Harris. Here's what happened to our democracy. What happened was that vote suppression won this election. Trump would have lost except for massive vote suppression. And what I mean by vote suppression, that's a very polite term for shafting black people out of their votes and other people of color, including a lot of young people whose votes are blue. Now, here's the calculation, and I'm very good at this stuff. I've been doing it for the NAACP, ACLU, Black Voters Matter, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson for years, this type of technical analysis which I take into courtrooms. Here's the number. If it wasn't for vote suppression, Kamala Harris would have had 3,565,000 more votes. 3,565,000 more votes, which would have given her a plurality of 1.2 million in the popular vote over Trump. Even more important, if not for Jim Crow trickery, which reached it's not new to this election, but it reached new heights in this election, Roland. Kamala Harris would have easily won Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia for a total of 286 electoral votes, and she would be president of the United States right now. And here's how it breaks down, Roland. And this is this number is from the United States Elections Assistance Commission, an agency you've probably never heard of, but their job is to keep track of the votes in America. They track it, but they also do something else. They keep track of the non-votes in America. We are a nation that America's nasty little secret, Roland, is that we don't let everyone vote, in particular voters of color. In 23, leading up to the 24 election, states purged 4,776,706 voters from the voter rolls. 4.8 million, almost 5 million voters were simply erased off the voter rolls. I looked at elections in Venezuela, Liberia, Mexico, Switzerland, China, you name it. They don't purge people off voter rolls the way we do, this purge business. Now, who's getting purged of those 5 million voters? Well, I took a deep dive into the purge of a couple of years ago, 300,000 voters in Georgia. I did this for the ACLU and Black Voters Matter NAACP, and I uncovered that 198,000 voters in Georgia who were removed because supposedly they moved from their Georgia voting address. Not one of them moved. Now, I'm not guessing. I hired the experts who work with Amazon who know exactly where you live. There's a lot of Roland Martins in America, but you don't get someone else's tidy-whities, do you? Because Amazon knows exactly where you live, and I got a special contract with the U.S. Postal Service to hunt down people. We're not guessing. We went name by name by name, 198,000 voters who they said had moved out of Georgia, and there they were at their homes. Now, who were they? We called 800 of them, which is a very big statistical sample. Almost all of them were African-American voters in Georgia. That's who gets purged. In Wisconsin, and if it weren't for those purges, Kamala Harris would have taken Georgia and other challenges to black voters. In Wisconsin, Roland, there was a purge of over 150,000 voters. Again, I went name by name by name through that list for Black Voters Matter. Literally with computers, we went through every single name. Tens of thousands of people accused of voting from an illegal address, and they were purged from the voter rolls before this election. Now, I actually mapped this with the Washington Post, and we found out that almost every single wrongly removed, purged voter not allowed to vote was an African American in Milwaukee. That was most of the list, and then some of the list were students at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, well-known left-wing school. Those are not Trump voters. So it's young voters and black voters. There was a complete match between the number of voters who were purged wrongly and black precincts in Milwaukee. That's just the beginning. That's the purges. 2.1 mail-in ballots, Roland. Let me repeat this. 2.1 million mail-in ballots were rejected. People don't realize, according to NPR, 13.8%, that's about 1 in 7 mail-in ballots is thrown in the garbage. Let me repeat that. You mail in your ballot, it's very easy for them to knock off your ballot. And they know who you are. They know your zip code. And in places like Georgia, they know your race because it says BLA next to your name if you're black in many states in the South. That's still on the voter rolls. Now, if it was random, if anyone's mail-in ballot was thrown out, Roland, so big deal. But the state of Washington did an analysis of whose mail-in ballot gets rejected. And they found that if you are black, you are 400% more likely than if you are white to have your mail-in ballot rejected. You didn't put a middle initial, you registered with your middle initial, but you didn't include your middle initial on the outside of the envelope. Postage due. Tricks like that, and it's all aimed at challenging black votes. Spoiled ballots, 585,000 ballots, which people voted in their precincts. They voted in their precincts, and those ballots are rejected as supposedly unreadable. All these gotcha things. Now, again, whose ballot gets rejected? Are you ready for this? The U.S. Civil Rights Commission did an analysis and found out that your chance of having your ballot rejected for some technical reason, whether it's mailed in or in precinct, is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white. We'll repeat that. I just told you about altogether about 3 million ballots rejected. 900% higher chance you will have your ballot rejected if you're black than if you're white. Provisional ballots. Roland, let me tell you something. There's this thing called provisional ballots. You go in, oh, your name's on the voter rolls. Don't worry, fill out this piece of paper, stick it in an envelope, this provisional ballot. I call them placebo ballots. Because they'll tell you, the nice little lady behind it is going to say, hey, your ballot will be counted, just fill out this form. Oh, yeah? Well, in states like Georgia, if you don't go into your county voting office, your clerk's office, and what they call cure your ballot, you have to show them your ID, you have to prove you're an American citizen. They're going to throw your ballot in the garbage, according, again, to the U.S. government, the United States Elections Assistance Commission. This isn't just Greg Palast saying it, Roland. The U.S. government says that 43% of all provisional ballots are thrown in the garbage. Whose ballots are they? If you're black, Hispanic, or Asian American, the chance you will be shunted to one of these placebo BS back of the bus provisional ballots is 300% higher if you're a voter of color than if you're white. So whose provisional ballots are in that dumpster? Voters of color. And how does this happen? The Brennan Center, if you go to gregpalast.com and actually see these, you can see this map that I got from the Brennan Center. 30 states passed laws making it more difficult for people of color to vote in the 2024 election. That was Trump's victory map. Altogether about, because not everyone purged would have voted for Harris, not everyone purged would have voted. But still, you've got about 2.3%, 3,565,000 voters who would have voted for Harris were denied their ballot or denied the right to vote in the first place. And that's just the beginning of the ugliness.
Greg, you called it Jim Crow trickery. What people have to understand that this idea in terms of how they changed these laws. First of all, was a white man in Ohio who sued and went to the Supreme Court because Ohio purged, saying that, well, he had not voted in 2 or 3 elections. And he sued and he lost. Supreme Court cleared the way for purging. But then what we've seen the legal purging where, we didn't realize X amount of people were on the list. It happened in Virginia. It's happened in Florida. It's happened. And there's no coincidence that it keeps happening to African Americans. And it's all about creating massive hurdles. As you said, you got to sign the outside and the inside. It's like all these different rules, and it happens in Pennsylvania and other places, and it's all designed to be able to confuse people. And if you don't follow every single step, then you're in violation.
And you don't even know whether you followed the steps. For example, you fill out a provisional ballot, and no one says, it says, put in, like, for example, in Ohio, it says put in an ID number. Well, if you say, or driver's license number, and if you say no driver's license, they'll disqualify your ballot. They will disqualify your ballot. I didn't know that voting had to do with whether you had a driver's license or not. I thought it had to do with whether you're an American citizen. And by the way, when the Supreme Court said, if you haven't voted a couple elections, they can remove you. Supposedly on grounds you've moved away, that's why you haven't voted. Well, it says right in the 1993 Voter Registration Act, the National Voter Registration Act, it says right there, you cannot be removed because you've chosen not to skip a couple elections for whatever reasons. By the way, I've skipped a couple elections because I'm a journalist and I've had to go out on election day when I didn't expect to, but basically out of the white areas, I didn't get purged and I'm not going to get purged. What happens is that you get purged if you're in Columbus, if you're in Dayton, if you're in Atlanta. And again, 4.776 million voters purged. And when I went through that list, overwhelmingly black and overwhelmingly wrong. Overwhelmingly wrong. And let me, by the way, if you want to see what happens. I'm giving you numbers because I'm a statistician, but I want to tell you about human beings, Roland. If you watch my film Vigilantes, Inc., which, by the way, Jamie Foxx and Leonardo DiCaprio have made this film available to stream for free. If you go to gregpalast.com, and you will see me in an Atlanta voting station, where, and I'll tell you about the man you're seeing right there, Major General Gamaliel Turner. Now, Gamaliel Turner, this man was 70 years old, the Pentagon's expert on warfare of the future, and if you can see on your screen, he is definitely African American. He was assigned by the President of the United States to go from Fort Benning, Georgia, to a base in California, and he didn't get his vote. His mail-in ballot didn't come, and he calls up Georgia. He says, "What happened?" They said, "Well, Major Turner, you've been challenged." He says, "What does that mean?" He says, "Someone challenged your vote, and so you can't get your ballot." He says, "Well, what do I do?" He says, "Well, just come on in and show you're a citizen and that you live in Georgia." And he says, "Wait, I'm a soldier. I'm 2,700 miles away, and 2 days before the election, you want me to come just come in?" Now, you have to understand, one person challenged 4,000 people out of the Fort Benning area, almost all of them African-American soldiers. This was not a government official. This was a Republican Party official, the chairman of the Republican Party in southern Georgia. His name's Alton Russell. He even dresses like a vigilante. You'll see him in the film with a 6-gun. He thinks he's Doc Holliday. This guy challenged 4,000 voters. Now, I got to tell you, Major Turner actually flew to Georgia. He flew 5,000 miles to go to federal court to get his ballot, one ballot counted. 4,000 others, again, mostly black soldiers out of Fort Benning, did not get their ballots. And you saw on the screen, you had one woman that I confront in the film. She works for Marjorie Taylor Greene, a white Republican. And I'm telling you, there were 88 challengers 2 years ago in Georgia, or 4 years ago, and all of them are white Republicans. They're not government officials. I'm not being racist about it. That's what they were. One single woman challenged 32,000 voters, and I showed her the pictures of her black neighbors. I said, "Do you know who these people are?" "No, you don't know who these people are, but you challenge their right to vote." So they were challenging soldiers. They're challenging students. They're challenging just all their black neighbors by the thousands. And in fact, are you ready for this? By August, 3 months before the election, the Trump front group, True the Vote, proudly announced that it had already challenged 317,886 voters. That's 1/3 of a million voters in swing states, Roland. 1/3 of a million voters, overwhelmingly voters of color. And this is something that hasn't been done since 1946. This is the Ku Klux Klan plan of 1946, these mass challenges of black voters. This is brand new to 2024.
This is one of the reasons why, like in North Carolina, they want to strip the governor of being able to control the state elections board. This is why they're doing this. So the question is, and I got about 90 seconds before I go to the panel for them to ask questions. What is now happening in advance? Because now, of course, they control the Department of Justice. You're not going to see any voting rights investigations. You're not going to see any of this. They're in charge of the levers of power. So what now? What happens next? How must people prepare themselves for what we are about to see? Because now they're going to have the power to do this on steroids.
Well, tomorrow I'm going to be having breakfast with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, or Wednesday, and planning what our line of attack will be to protect these votes. I'm working with Gerald Griggs, president of the NAACP of Georgia, Latasha Brown, Black Voters Matter. You notice I'm not working with the Democratic Party. One, because I'm a journalist and I'm a nonpartisan. But the Democratic Party is totally missing in action on vote suppression. They just aren't there. But the groups are organizing to stop this new Ku Klux Klan plan. You have to understand that in 1946, the Ku Klux Klan elected one of the Klan leaders, Eugene Talmadge, as governor of Georgia by systematically challenging virtually every black voter in Georgia. Now, these Jim Crow laws are in the books of about 30 states still allow. I can say, dig this, Roland, I can say, oh, Roland Martin doesn't live where he says he is. He shouldn't be allowed to vote. Now, who's Greg Palast to say that? Doesn't matter. As long as you live in my county, I can challenge your right to vote, and you're not going to get a ballot. Or worse, you'll mail in your ballot. You won't even know that your ballot wasn't counted.
Right. So here's the question. Let me do this here. I want to bring in my panel right now.
Okay.
I want them to get their questions in, so we can, so people can really understand, because the depth of this, and again, we talk about it a lot, that people don't fully grasp. Is how significant this is on many levels. Dr. Amakongo Debinga Sr. is professorial lecturer, School of International Service at American University, author of Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racist Stereotypes and Why It Matters. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, she's an economist, author of Surviving and Thriving, 365 Facts in Black Economic History. She's also president emerita at Bennett College. Joining us from D.C., Joe Richardson. He is civil rights attorney out of Los Angeles. Joe, I'll start with you. Your question for Greg Palast.
Mr. Palast, appreciate you being here. Roland kind of took what I was going to ask next, but let me ask this. You've been doing what you've been doing for a long time. What's the next investigative frontier for you? Because I think one of the things that has to happen is that journalists that are actually looking for information that are not in the box, as it were, like the Roland Martins and the Greg Palast and things like that, are going to have to help to uncover a lot of these truths just through research. I love it that you're a statistician. What is it that you're going to be, I know you're going to do some things related to this issue, but is there any other issues out there that connect to some of these things, some of these justice issues that you're looking at next?
Well, I am very, very concerned about this, and I want to dig deeper into this, in the challenge, this mass challenge of voters by self-appointed vigilantes. Again, this is the Ku Klux Klan plan of 1946 and this Trump front group called True the Vote. They're the ones, by the way, that came up with this, with the film 2,000 Mules, where they called 2,000 black men. Every one of them was a black man. 2,000 black men were supposedly stuffing ballot drop boxes with multiple ballots. They were being paid supposedly by George Soros and Mark Zuckerberg $10 each to commit a felony crime. I got to tell you, every person that they showed on camera as a black men stuffing ballot boxes, because every ballot box has a camera on top of it so they can see what voters. Every one of them was a legal voter, and they've been sued to fare thee well, but they don't care. They don't care. They were proudly knocked off 1/3 voters by August. Their aim was 2 million voters by Election Day. What I have to do is, I've been getting stonewalled by state officials who have not been giving me the numbers. How many people in the end were challenged? How many people actually did lose their vote? I need those numbers. It looks like the numbers are huge, but I want to get a more exact analysis from each state, but they're stonewalling us. And we're not going to get the numbers from the Elections Assistance Commission until maybe even for another year, if at all, because the states are resisting and they're not required by law to turn over the data. We're the only we're the only nation among so-called democracies where the vote count and the vote non-count is some type of state secret. We need to know how many ballots were rejected, how many voters like Major Turner lost their vote. When I was and so I want to find out, I need to get those numbers, because this is a brand new thing, this vigilante vote challenges of, again, not government officials, but self-appointed vigilantes who are getting lists. We had this one woman in Cobb County, Georgia, works for Marjorie Taylor Greene. She submitted 32,000 names in Cobb County, 32,000 names, one GOP official. And, again, it's not just, and I want to tell you, it's very important. It's not just numbers. I was at the polling station when a 92-year-old woman in Atlanta was thrown out of the polling station where she'd voted for 50 years, 92 years old, in a walker, thrown out into a storm. Her granddaughter in hysterics. Well, I went to the house that she said she no longer lived in. It was just down the street from the polling station. And there was a picture of her having dinner with Martin Luther King from 50 years old earlier in that house. This was Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin. So if they can knock off Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin, they can knock off anyone, and they are. This is what I really want to look at, is this explosion of vigilante vote challenges. And under Trump, if you think the Justice Department is going to stop it, think again. We have to stop it ourselves.
Julian Malvo, your question. Julian?
How are you, Greg? Last time I saw you, we were Reverend Jackson.
Yes.
I really appreciate your work always. You just do such great work.
Thank you.
So you looked at the presidential election and said Kamala would have won had it not been for this suppression. Were there states where we also lost congressional seats? I don't think we lost Senate seats. We didn't have any close Senate races, but congressional seats. Are there other races that you can lift up that might have made a difference in this environment?
Oh, absolutely. I was looking at close congressional races. I still haven't finished the numbers. You know, one of the reasons it took me a couple months, it's a lot of numbers to crunch, and I don't want to just throw stuff out there. But it looks like the Democrats would have picked up at least three or four congressional seats, if not for these vote suppression tactics. Because again, when you knock off Major Turner's vote, when you take away a soldier's vote, when you take away Martin Luther King's cousin's vote, that goes all the way down the ballot. And so I have been very concerned that basically the GOP should not have control of the House of Representatives at this moment, except for their successful wielding of vote suppression tactics. So, but I will be issuing a report on the congressional races soon.
But I will say that, but I will say this here, Greg, that the voter suppression that we saw, it does have an impact when you talk about the Senate race in Pennsylvania of Bob Casey.
Yes, and I want to look at Pennsylvania because Cleta Mitchell, Donald Trump's lawyer, Cleta Mitchell she challenged tens of thousands of voters in the Philadelphia area through an organization called Eagle AI, which is, by the way, a very interesting name because Eagle Eye was the name of a racist group back in 1964 that challenged a whole bunch of Hispanic voters in Arizona. They brought back this racist operation from 64. They brought back the Klan operation from 46. It's shameless. And it's getting very little coverage in the mainstream U.S. press. Now, people should understand, I write for The Guardian and BBC, which are the world's major outlets in the English language. But it doesn't come into my home country. So I'm all over on mainstream in the rest of the world, just not in America.
Congo, what's your question?
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Palace, for this work. I want to touch on, and you also mentioned Cleta Mitchell, who wanted to target youth votes. So I wanted to come back to your part on the youth vote. As a professor, I see so many kids who are disenfranchised and the like, but they don't have this level of information. They're not getting it on K-12 level. What is your charge? What is your opinion about what we should be doing with the young people as it relates to making sure they're aware of this as they're coming into the voting age and process?
You're doing it. Education, education, education. The first thing I tell people, and really important for students, check your registration 90 days before an election. See if you've been challenged, see if you've been purged. In most states, within 9 days of election, you can re-register. In fact, if you haven't voted in a couple elections, just re-register. Even if you think, I've been voting the same place for years. No. Check your registration. I had a student in Madison, Wisconsin that I put on camera, and you'll see him in my film Vigilantes, Inc., a Vietnamese-American kid. He had moved dorm rooms. He just moved, different part of the building. Well, under the law, you don't lose your vote if you move within your county. But they do this to students if they've moved at all. They send them a postcard to confirm their address. And if they don't get that postcard, because it looks like junk mail, most people throw it away. I call it the poison postcard system. If you don't see that postcard and return it, you lose your vote. One way to get around that is tell all your students, tell everyone, and tell them to tell their families. check your registration 90 days before. The problem with the new challenge system, for example, Georgia changed its law so that these vigilantes can challenge your vote on election day. They don't have to notify you for 30 days. Well, the election's over after 30 days, so you get challenged. You may not. In fact, it was only by accident that Major Turner, this African-American officer, found out that his vote was challenged because he called. He said, "Where's my ballot?" They didn't notify him. They just said, "Well, you've been challenged." So we have to tell people to check their registrations, check and check again and again. A lot of states now, dozens of states, have same-day registration. So bring every form of photo ID you have and something to show your address, like an electric bill or something. So you start out by protecting your vote. The second thing you do is you get active. If you have students that aren't part of an organization on the front lines, forget partisan stuff. You know, I'm not talking about joining Democratic or Republican parties. I'm talking about work with Black Voters Matter Fund, work with Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push, work with the NAACP. There's great organizations out there, like less known to a lot of people is the Transformative Justice Coalition, headed by Barbara Arnwine. A great Hispanic organization on the ground, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project. If you don't get active, the other side is active. And by the way, they don't go to sleep in off years. Americans go, progressives go to sleep in off years, whereas the vote purgers and the Jim Crow operatives, they're 24/7, 365 days a year, every year. They don't rest. And so we can't either.
Greg Palast, I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Before I let you go, I have been interviewing some of the candidates running for DNC chair. So if you had to ask Ben Wickler a question, what would it be?
So when are you going to take on Jim Crow and stop hiding on this issue? I can tell you right now, Reverend Jackson asked both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to watch my film, to watch Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, which you can, again, go to gregpalast.com, stream it for free. He said, watch it and do something about it. And Harris said, well, when I get elected, I'll sign the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. He said, well, here's the problem, Kamala, as you just found out. If you don't do something before the election, you ain't going to get elected. So that's what we have to do, educate. And by the way, if you want to show your films in the class, in your classrooms, in your churches, go to gregpalast.com and we can hook it all up and you can get that film so people can see for themselves a real story. And it's a movie, it's entertaining. But again, for those running for DNC chair, hey, man, take on Jim Crow. We got to do it again.
All right, Greg Palast, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now, we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $6.65 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.
Folks, I told you what was going on here. I told you what was at play. What has been happening in terms of these crazy, deranged white supremacists and what their agenda is and what their focus is and everything that they have done since January 20th. DEI, 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 DEI. So you got to understand something. First attacks with Black Lives Matter. Then the next attacks, critical race theory. Then it was woke. Now it's DEI. All of that for them means black. Black first and foremost. So understand something. Today, a news conference took place 14 hours after a Black Hawk helicopter, a military helicopter, collided with an American Airlines regional jet not far from the White House at DCA. I don't call it Reagan. I call it by his airport code. At DCA Airport. And this is what Donald Trump, this is what J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Sean Duffy had to say.
We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened, because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite.
So Donald Trump is saying that if you're disabled, you can't sit at a chair and watch a monitor as planes are landing and taking off. That it requires you to be physically imposing and muscular and strong. That's what he's saying. But that wasn't the only stupidity. Here's the grossly unqualified, the most unqualified vice president we've ever had. Here's J.D. Vance.
Something the president said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry.
Y'all didn't catch that. Air traffic controllers, people who want to be an air traffic controller, they've sued. They've sued because of the color of their skin. Y'all need to see, y'all always got to pay attention. He didn't say gender. He didn't say sexuality. It was the color of their skin. Y'all know it ain't that many black and brown air traffic controllers, right? We're not done yet. Here is the former TV host, who's now the Secretary of Defense, Peter Hegseth. Listen to the racism in his statement.
We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government.
Y'all didn't catch that? Skin color. Black people. Latinos. He's talking about y'all too. Brown people. He talking about Cambodians. He talking about Asians. Native Americans. He talking about everybody who ain't white. But white women, he really talking about y'all too. Here is former reality show member, Sean Duffy, who is now the Secretary of Transportation.
When we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces.
They are implying that the pilots of the American Airlines plane, and the pilots of the Black Hawk, and the air traffic controllers, grossly unqualified, awful, shameful, despicable. That's what they're saying. Watch this. He was asked So a reporter asked him later, again, about DEI. Listen to what the con man says.
On DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah.
I want y'all to hear that. We're going to look into that. But you're out talking, quack, 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 opining on what happened. Bodies are still in the Potomac, y'all. They have not recovered all. This is a live shot of the recovery effort. The bodies have not been recovered. But it was 7-8 hours ago that these idiots were saying this. That wasn't the only question. Caitlin Collins of CNN also asked him a question regarding this. And let me play it. Listen to this.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference?
Does it comfort their families?
They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
But are you
not a smart question. Are you getting ahead of this? That's always him being bitchy and complaining about the media when these things happen. It goes further. Y'all, he literally, this is like a while ago. He signs an executive order blaming President Biden and DEI for the crash. Did y'all hear what I just said? He signs an executive order. So he's already decided that the crash is completely Joe Biden's fault and all because of DEI. Watch this.
Sir.
Thank you.
Second, for your signature, we have a presidential memorandum titled Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety. In light of the damage done to aviation safety by the Biden administration's DEI and woke policies, what this presidential memorandum orders is for your Secretary of Transportation and FAA administrator, in this case, acting FAA administrator, to basically ensure that we are actively undoing all of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage was done, and that we're ensuring that people hired within the FAA, in keeping with your memorandum of January 21st, are only the most outstanding, capable people for the jobs that they're being hired into.
In other words, competence.
Yes, sir. Elevating competence over everything. Republican Party.
Now, we literally have incompetent people trying to assess other people's competence. That's literally what we have here. On Maria Bartiromo's Fox News show, Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles, one of the dumbest members of Congress, what did he immediately rush to? That damn DEI.
Is there any reason to believe there was any foul play here?
Well, at this time, you hate to jump to any conclusions. Obviously, we'll look at everything.
Stop. At this time, we hate to jump to conclusions, but what the hell? Let me jump away. Go.
all the boxes. You know, I had just taken off from D.C. Before the crash, and of course it came across my cell phone, and I saw it and was horrified. So prayers go out to all those impacted. But, you know, to your point, I think you have to look at this with eyes wide open, see what happened. You know, human error, was it some sort of equipment failure? Did DEI play a role in this type of thing? So I think you look at it, you go into it with, again, eyes wide open, and make sure that something like this never happens. It's been a number of years since we've had an aircraft collision such as this. And so, again, prayers for all those impacted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, haven't had one since 2009, but oh, it's that damn DEI that just did it, Now, this is how they're operating. Just the other day, Carolyn Levitt, who they're hailing as the youngest White House press secretary ever, who's an idiot who got them a federal restraining order yesterday when it came to one of their policies because of her dumbass tweets. This was her just a couple of days ago from the White House podium talking about wokeness.
So what does this pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our federal bureaucracy and agencies. No more funding for Green New Deal social engineering policies.
Ooh, all that wokeness. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Democratic minority leader in the House, he is actually in California. I was texting him earlier. He was meeting with families in Altadena who've been impacted by the fires there. He dropped this video on social media.
Above DCA airport. Lives have been lost. Families have been devastated. People are suffering. And the leader of this country decides to go out and peddle lies, conspiracy theories, and attack people of color and women without any basis whatsoever. Have you no decency? Have you no respect for the families whose lives have been turned upside down?
Folks, there were tweets there. Former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. As a matter of fact, there was a point in the news conference. Y'all let me know when you have it, when Donald Trump literally said, just called it was bullshit, his leadership there. This is what Buttigieg tweeted out today. Go ahead and pull it up. He said, no, I need Buttigieg's tweet, y'all. Come on. Let's go. Pete Buttigieg's tweet. Let's go. All right, here's a tweet. Despicable. As families grieve, Trump should be leading, not lying. We put safety first, drove down close calls, grew air traffic control, and had no commercial airline crash fatalities out of millions of flights on our watch. President Trump now oversees the military and the FAA. One of his first acts was to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. Time for the president to show actual leadership and explain what he would do to prevent this from happening again. Pollster Cornell Belcher tweeted this out. You can get the Cornell Belcher tweet, and then after him, you're going to get the Ilhan Omar tweet. Belcher, America deserves better than this. To use this tragedy to push a blatant and racial political agenda is absolutely appalling. It's not okay. It's abhorrent. It's unimaginable that a president would stand before us and dishonor the role of the office this way, not us. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar said bodies are still being pulled from the Potomac. Donald Trump and his grossly incompetent administration are blaming this deadly crash on DEI priorities in white women. This is disgusting, racist, and sexist. Their clueless actions have consequences, and they should be held accountable. Here is freshman Congressman Shamari Figures. He posted this tweet as well. Ensuring qualified candidates have a fair chance in employment had nothing to do with last night's tragic plane crash. President Trump's statements are classic race baiting, and that rhetoric is dangerous and unacceptable. And he goes on there as well. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson of Florida, she also posted this tweet talking about what took place. While human bodies are still being pulled from the Potomac, Donald Trump is blaming white women and minorities for the deadly crash under the guise of DEI. Former DNC chair, still current DNC chair, Jamie Harrison put this up, posted this on social. Words can't express my disgust in the moment in which you should lead the nation in mourning and navigating a tragedy. This heartless imbecile finds ways to divide. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, she posted this on social media as well. This is a blatant lie and a disgrace to the memories of the victims while emergency responders are still recovering people's loved ones in the freezing water. Trump is using these families' pain for politics and blaming their deaths on DEI. That's right. She called it a failure of leadership. She's absolutely right. I'm going to bring in my panel right now. Noah Haynes, Dr. Noah Haynes, Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. Joining us from D.C., Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University from D.C. Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show, joining us out of D.C. as well. Reese, I'll start with you. Racist, sexist, it's very simple. This ain't hard to figure out. That's exactly what it is. They stood there having no information on what took place, no idea about mechanical failure, no idea about communications failure, nothing about it. In fact, for the people who are wondering, here are the photos of the pilot. The father of the pilot posted this, talking about his pain of losing his son. So you see right here, you see the pilots, you see the flight attendants as well. One of them is an African-American sister. Do y'all have the image that they posted of the actual, right? This is the photo right here of one of the three personnel in the Black Hawk helicopter. And so we don't know who the FAA flight control person was. But the reality is, it's all DEI white people with the pilots in the planes. But let's blame it on the black people, because that sells well to the white people who voted for us and put us here in the first place.
Right. First of all, let me just say my heart goes out to the victims and their families of this very tragic, horrific accident that should not be political fodder right now. But since Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and JD Vance want to go there, fuck you, Donald Trump, fuck you, Pete Hegseth, and fuck you, JD Vance, and fuck everybody down with this bullshit. But my message is really to MAGA. You know, what this whole episode reveals, white MAGA people and MAGA people all together, is how lowly Donald Trump and them really view y'all. They think y'all are so fucking stupid, so underdeveloped in terms of your brain and your capacity to critically analyze a situation, that they can throw out buzzwords and dog whistles like DEI when they really want to say the N-word, and you're going to be satisfied. You're going to find comfort in the idea that you are safe in these skies as long as a black person, which is statistically lower, likely to happen, is behind the wheel. As long as it's a white man, you're going to be good. And that's such a fucking cop-out. It's actually really ridiculous that they think, and they might be justified in thinking this. I don't know. Y'all ain't really shown us that you any smarter than what they give you credit for. But they think that they can get out of this without being held accountable for the fact that Elon Musk beefing with the FAA head is why he resigned, reportedly, on the day of Donald Trump's inauguration. They didn't bother to put somebody in there to be acting FAA chief. Why Donald Trump got rid of the TSA head, why they put an indiscriminate hiring freeze on the entire government, which impacted the ability to staff air traffic controllers and the FAA. They're hoping that your bigotry and your stupidity is going to be enough to get you to not notice that they are ill-equipped to handle the challenges that this country faces. They're not getting up there talking about, do we need better technology on our military aircraft? Do we need better technology on our airplanes? Do we need better technology in terms of how we route this very complex system of flight patterns and DCA? No, they're not talking about none of that shit. They're talking about motherfucking DEI. Are you kidding me right now? So as much as this is an attack on the intellect and the capabilities of black people, black, Latino, Asian, or whoever else situation may be, which, by the way, there were victims of every race and creed and gender and nationality even on these aircrafts, but I guess their lives don't matter.
No.
While they think that that is going to console you, they're unserious about tackling the challenges. And that is more detrimental to our country and our safety than any stupid ass and racist propaganda that they want to perpetuate.
So I want to remind people, Charlie Kirk, who is a big-time Trump supporter, has his ear. Remember the racist crap that he said before, which Elon Musk also, when he questioned the intellect of HBCU graduates and airline programs at HBCUs? Here is the racism of Trump MAGA supporter Charlie Kirk. This is a year ago. Matter of fact, it's dated January 23rd, 2024.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits, or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off. And I feel better now thinking about that.
No, I mean, like, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality.
Absolute bullshit. No, that's exactly what he believes, and it's exactly what a lot of other white people believe. Because if they see somebody black, or they see a woman, or see Latino, Asian American, how they think, if I don't see a white man, then, we're in trouble. That's what they think about engineering. I have talked to numerous black lawyers how they walk into the room and they assume that they were staff. We know this when it comes to black doctors. This is the master race ideology of Donald Trump, MAGA, and today's Republican Party.
Absolutely. We are 100% talking about eugenics. We are talking about the 1800s with Francis Galton rolling out the idea of eugenics, positive and negative eugenics, in terms of the bad stuff, the negative stuff that happens when you're not white and when you're breeding versus the positive stuff that happens when you're white and when you're breeding. We are literally there. They are saying the thing out loud, and the gaslighting part of it is to basically convince you that actually I'm not being racist. I'm just really concerned. I want everyone to be safe, and I want the best people to have, to have the job. I'm not really being racist. Honestly, I've said this before. I'm going to continue saying it. It really just is plain old racism. And I have somewhat of a prediction. As a political scientist, that's not something that we're supposed to do. But you know what's going to happen eventually? All of these blatant racists, all of them, at some point where this turns around, they are going to look in a camera and try to convince everybody that they did not say what they have said with their entire chest. And sometimes I even wonder if Trump's people really like him, because it's like, do y'all really think this agenda, this anti-DEI, which basically means anti-black, anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-brown, anti-all the things but straight white Christian males, how long do y'all think that this country is going to be okay with this? I mean, and that is a very serious question, because at some point, this will turn around. You are going to blame over 60 people losing their lives on DEI before you have the facts. And now it's come out that there was an overworked air traffic controller doing the job of two people at once. And I'm not saying that is the cause. I am saying there's a correlation, not necessarily causation. So you are going out on the presidential podium and you have all of your jackboot thugs around you to support your racism, to support your anti-DEI, your anti-blackness, your anti-wokeness, to support those claims without evidence, without an investigation. And I want to say this. It is disgusting that a president of the United States, that the Secretary of Defense is saying this about not just civilians, but people in the military that lost their lives. I have never in my life seen people so disrespectful of the military, of national security. And I truly hope not only just the flight community, but I also hope the military community stands up. I've seen a few names out there, talking about this administration being a national security risk. I mean, people like me have been saying that over and over and over. But y'all, they don't just hate Black people. They really don't like Americans. They don't like democracy. They don't like rule of law. They don't like any of it.
Well, here's
go ahead, Roland.
But here's the reality. Here's the reality. This is what they want, Greg. And no, I gotta disagree. This is exactly who his supporters want. This is exactly what they want. This is exactly what they voted for. He said the exact same things. I laid it out in White Fear. Title, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. This is exactly it. And what they're doing is they're showing their contempt. They don't care about 2043. They do understand America is changing. They're saying, no. This is white land. This is ours. Everything is ours. The money is ours. The power is ours. The jobs are ours. Everything is ours. Y'all are meant to be subservient. You are meant to be sharecroppers. You are meant to be slaves without shackles. And there are Black people, if skin folk ain't kinfolk. Remember, Charlie Kirk said that. But remember what that hateful ass Candace Owens had to say. The exact same thing. Listen.
Unfortunately, that is the reality of what happens when it comes to DEI. And what he is remarking on is true. I would be terrified if I got onto a plane and I saw a woman flying the plane. And I know that we have the United CEO saying that he just wants to fulfill a quota. He just wants there to be more women and wants there to be more Black people. And he's not concerned at first with qualifications. That is something that should alarm all of us, guys.
Now, again, we know, Greg, we all know. I mean, if we sat here and pulled the record of plane crashes in America dating back 30, 40 years, we're going to see nearly all white pilots. If we pull the records of who were the air traffic controllers when those crashes happened, it's a good bet that list is going to be nearly all white. We can go on and on. We can talk about food poisoning. We can talk about, we can go on and on and on in America. It's white folks. If we want to talk about white collar crimes and Ponzi schemes and bankrupting people, it's going to be mostly a white dude at the helm of it. But for them, oh no, anything that's gone wrong, it's those damn Black people. It's those damn women. It's white women, because when they say Black, if you're a Black woman, you're in the Black category. It's those damn Latinos. This is absolutely sickening to their base. It's them. They are grossly unqualified. They are dumb. They are evil. They don't know shit. We can't trust them with anything. So only give them menial jobs, because the only people who can do anything right and just, who is superior, who has the intellect, who has the psychological awareness, the only people who can do those things are our robust, strong, Christian, heterosexual white men.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Square-jawed, right stuff.
Boom.
Right, man.
Boom. Square-jawed, right stuff. That's the movie. That's the astronaut movie.
Yes.
The movie. There you go. And guess what? Black astronauts could not qualify. Go ahead, Greg.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And of course, that's who probably most of the folks watching today. Well, a lot of people probably remember Dick Tracy. If this were a Dick Tracy cartoon, of course, we would refer to Charlie Kirk as Littleface. So anybody listening to Littleface. But yeah.
Well, actually, I disagree. The people who are listening are those white boys in fraternities and on campuses, because those incels and what's trapping them, or that Black boy with the shooting in Nashville who listened to them and listened to Candace Owens. Oh, yeah, that's who they're talking to.
I definitely would agree with that. And that's who is, as you say, the lie. That is the lie, and that is the hope that they are peddling, because in the short term anyway, Donald Trump's protestations just before the election notwithstanding, you do have to vote for elective office. And to get those millions, you have to peddle that hope. You have to peddle that lie that this is a white person's country. And as you say, you can leave those jobs to them. Unfortunately, all four of us have probably experienced this over the last couple of weeks. I certainly experienced it even as late as today when I walked in a store, and a Continental African sister who's been working there for a long time with a lot of folk from Spanish-speaking communities said to me when I asked, where is everybody? She said, my coworkers don't want to come to work. They're afraid. And so I talked to Benny Thompson yesterday, who said he had one of his constituents call his office in Mississippi crying for help. Now, this is someone who probably did not vote for him, didn't vote for Kamala Harris, but someone who woke up last week to find that his crop is not now being tended. Why? Because everybody's gone. So, the work that they will do, you and the hillbilly horde, you're not getting a chance. Get the calluses up on your hands, because you got to go pick some fruit, my friend. But, as we heard that racist talk, and then Littleface and others talking, it made me think about the fact, I remember a couple of summers ago, every August we go to Egypt. We take folks to Egypt on tour. And we took a charter. We chartered a plane to go from Aswan to Abu Simbel, just above the border with the Sudan, to go see the Temple of Abu Simbel, Ramses II, and Nefertari. And as we were getting off the plane, I heard the folk in front of me cheering. Now, these are Africans from the United States, who we go to Egypt a lot, but they were cheering because they had seen something that we haven't seen in all the years. I've been going to Egypt since, 2007, and taking students, and then now lots of other people since then. For the first time, we saw something that we hadn't seen, certainly hadn't seen in the United States. It was a woman pilot. And it was like, wow. So everybody, one by one, we almost got delayed heading to the temple because everybody wanted to take a picture with this sister. Now, let's go back to Littleface and Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all their friends. Whatever happens to you really is of no concern to me. The only concern I have is as it impacts me and my people and human beings. You are beyond contempt. You're beneath contempt. As Reese said, you hustled the FAA head out, talking crazy about him because it was messing with your business and your mind. And Dr. Haynes, as Nola said, you've got overworked people in the tower. The FAA released a report just before you went on air, Roland, saying exactly right, that you had someone who was working in really two jobs, one dealing with helicopters, the other one dealing with training flights and things like that. And then, I was reading something by David Susi, who is a retired FAA investigator. And he was saying today that DCA, and you're absolutely right, Roland, nobody black calls it by the R word, that curse word. Nobody calls it that. Certainly, I learned that when I moved to DC, and they're like, we don't call it. I was, oh, God, hey, no problem. You ain't got to tell me but once. But he was saying that not only is DCA one of the busiest airports in the world, it is absolutely the most complicated, because they add those airspaces are shared with military aircraft, VIP flights, White House transportation, drones flying clandestine operations. If you fly out of DCA at a certain time, like tomorrow, Friday, you get there in the afternoon, you're going to see half of Congress. That's when they going home. And so when you think about that, and you think about the fact after the Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act of 2024 added 10 additional daily flights to the schedule, and all four senators from Virginia and from Maryland protested because they said, you don't understand, you have a perfect storm for accidents. And that man stood up today, finally, and did what we all know he does. He moved in the direction of white nationalism for political gain. His base is going to be his base.
Yep.
And since it's going to be its base, the rest of us have to decide what we will do to stop him. Because guess what? The world isn't waiting on us to stop him. All the leaders of the Caribbean and Latin American countries were supposed to meet today, but they canceled the meeting, and the headlines in the United States were that they bucked to Trump. No, they didn't buck to Trump, fool. They have phones. The world is organizing. The only question we got to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do? Because they're getting ready to leave us in the dirt.
See, I need everybody to understand. I'm telling you, y'all, all y'all folks who are listening, and I see it's 10,000. This the most we've had on our YouTube channel live at one time in a number of months. This thesis, white fear, I have been speaking on this nationally in speeches, on television and radio since 2009. I literally said to John Avalon at CNN, who's now a member of Congress, John, this is in 2009, I said we're in the beginning stages of white minority resistance. Y'all need to understand what's at play. What you heard today, what you've seen with all these executive orders and policies, it is white minority resistance. They are scared to death of the nation becoming majority white. But they don't have to worry about that because you got a lot of Latinos who are calling themselves white Hispanics. See, we got to understand what's at play. And everybody who's watching, I had somebody say today, somebody said that they had 2 Black History Month speeches that were canceled. They said, keep the money, just don't show up. Somebody else said that several speakers bureaus have said that Black History Month bookings are down up to 70%. Same is going to take place next month, Women's History Month. What you have going on is you now have corporations, they're attacking the affinity groups. So the groups in companies and the federal government of Black employees and Latino employees and gay employees and women employees, I laid out last week that they are attacking the civil rights infrastructure because what they're angry about are the gains since white people in this country, namely white men, are pissed off right now because they have to compete. They're angry. See, everybody who's watching, y'all got to understand. Let me walk y'all through because I don't think a lot of people understand what I'm talking about here. If we talk about Title IX, which was passed in 72, that is a provision of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That law is built around the 64 Civil Rights Act. The law targeted colleges that receive federal funding, research, and they said, y'all can't be discriminating against women. You getting federal dollars. Senator Ted Kennedy led that law. That law is the reason you have seen female doctors, female engineers, female lawyers. It opened the professional schools up. The 1996 American with Disabilities Act, that law was passed. That law, which called for accessibility and ramps and all sorts of things to aid the disabled, do y'all know what the underpinning of the 1996 Civil Rights Act is? The 1996 American with Disabilities Act, the underpinning of that is the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Why do they hate the 1965 Voting Rights Act? Because that today is how Latinos and Koreans and Chinese and Cambodians and Taiwanese can vote in their native language because of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Why do they hate the Fair Housing Act? Because you couldn't have covenants. You couldn't have your racially restrictive neighborhoods, redlining, all those things. Who supported a law in California that said we don't have to sell our homes to Black people? Ronald Reagan, who was elected governor of California, who was elected president, who before Trump was the biggest Republican hero in history, even before Abe Lincoln. I need all y'all watching to understand what's going on. The right in this country, the white right in this country, have been pissed off because this nation was forced to live up to its creed. All men and women are created equal. They hated that. What did Dr. King say? Be true to what you put on paper. And the civil rights infrastructure has been forcing America to be true to what you put on paper. And they are pissed. And they are angry. And they are upset. And I need y'all, during the news conference. I know some of y'all are saying, Roland, I don't understand. Why did he attack Pete Buttigieg so viciously? Pete Buttigieg is a white man, but he gay. They like, nah, we ain't down with gay white men. Listen to this.
A website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So
now, yeah, that's what that was. So that was, I'm gonna attack him because he's gay. I'm gonna attack him because he worked for Democrats. And so that's what all this was about. Support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. You heard we just talked about there. Folks, I can't reiterate this enough. Listen to me clearly. I cannot reiterate this enough. When you've got technology companies running scared, when you've got legacy media not doing their job, when you've got black-owned media that is disintegrated, now is more than ever for us to have independent media that cares about the truth, that is willing to say what needs to be said. So when you support Roland Martin Unfiltered, this show, when you support the Black Star Network, you're not just supporting me, you're supporting the other shows. Our goal is to add 2 more shows this year. We want additional shows. We want more weekly and daily shows because we want to be able to speak truth to power. We want to be able to say what is necessary where other people are scared. And when you are scared, when you're looking over your shoulder, oh my God, that advertising contract is not going to come in. Well, guess what? A lot of these major ad agencies, they're not even supporting us anyway. You know, in 6 years of doing this show, Group M hasn't done a damn thing with us. Publicis hasn't done anything with us. You've got Horizon, you've got all of these folks, they haven't done jack. And so we are calling it like we see it, and we're speaking truth. And unlike some of these other so-called progressives and people who believe in truth, I'm not running around trying to kiss MAGA ass and kiss Trump's ass. I won't be going to Mar-a-Lago, not for a damn thing. And so this is about us being able to speak truth. So when you support this show and this network with your resources, that is exactly what is happening, because we are trying to build something that is bigger and broader, and actually it has the courage to say what needs to be said, even when it makes other folk uncomfortable. If you want to contribute giving Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. This is it right here. And if you are listening, simply go to blackstarnetwork.com to check it out. Also, if you want to see your checking money order, some of y'all old school, we understand that. See your checking money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 2003 7-0196. PayPal, R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And again, folks, we've got some 4 million social media followers. If only 20,000 of our fans contribute at least $50 each, which comes out to $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day, that's $1 million that allows us to be able to continue to build, to add these shows and do the work that's required. So your support is needed. So please join our Bring the Funk fan club today. If you've not already joined, if you have given to us in the past, please renew your commitment, because it's important that we support Black-owned media, because Black-owned media matters. I saw something earlier today, and it always amazes me when I hear these Fox News people talk about DEI, who's not hired. And I swear, Ainsley Earhart is one of the dumbest people I've ever seen in my life. If y'all want to talk about unqualified, this is called get the job because you're a white woman with blonde hair. This is also the woman who Sean Hannity is going to marry. Listen to what, that ain't it. Listen to what, y'all don't have it, the Ainsley Earhart clip. All right. I saw this clip today, y'all, and my Lord, I said, I can't believe this. Y'all, so they were having a conversation this morning on Fox News, and they were talking to a former, we got it now? Thank you. All right, well, okay, well, we got it. Just play it.
Jake, you just don't see it from these divers' perspective, but, you know, as a former door kicker and Navy SEAL, you've flown in those Black Hawks before. When you saw the crash, what was your reaction to that? We're talking about experienced pilots there.
So I talked to one of my pilots that flies into DCA all the time, and he said that the big difference is the commercial airlines have a TCAS system, which is a avoidance system that they have, and the Army helicopters don't have it. The Army helicopters don't have transponders broadcasting locations. So, you know, as a guy that's ridden in helicopters, I'm going to tell you right now, I was down at SEAL Team 8, and we had 5 helicopter crashes down there. Helicopter is not your friend when it's falling out of the sky.
It's a tough question to ask, Jake, but I always think about this when we report on someone who has died. What were those last moments like? Because you don't want anyone to be scared, but you also want people to say their prayers before and have a little bit of time. But if I were in that situation, you just want it to be quick, you know? So do you think when the plane crashes, when something like this happens, there's no pain, right? The people don't experience that.
Golly, can you give me a harder question?
I know,
Golly.
I know, but I just want to make sure they didn't fall through the air and land on the water.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really go out and say that. It was a pretty kinetic crash. We've all seen the big explosion. Obviously, the helicopter's rotor blades went through the bottom of the aircraft. Aircraft turned and crashed into the water. I imagine at most you had probably 8 seconds of just absolute terrifying fear. I mean, we can't go talk to any of the victims, but I mean, probably the most horrific thing that you could live through.
Live through? What the fuck is he talking about?
All of them. What are any of them talking about?
Can you explain? Can you explain to us what it felt like in their final seconds? He's alive. He can't tell you what. This fool.
DEI.
This fool. I just want y'all need to fast forward the clip. Fast forward the clip to when she started talking, because I got to play it again, because I just need y'all to understand. This is the idiot who's one of the 3 co-hosts on Fox and Friends. This is the place where Peter Hegseth was before he became Secretary of Defense. He was a host of Fox and Friends on the weekend. But this right here, I just want y'all to know, if y'all thought Brian Kilmeade was the dumbest one on that show, it used to be Steve Doocy. Then Brian Kilmeade became the dumbest one. Ainsley Earhart, it ain't even close, is truly the dumbest fool on television. And these white folks at Fox News should never talk about qualifications and smarts and anything. Roll it again.
A little bit of time, but if I were in that situation, you just want it to be quick, you know? So do you think when the plane crashes, when something like this happens, there's no pain, right? The people don't experience that.
Golly, can you give me a harder question?
I know, but I just want to make sure they didn't fall through the air and land on the water.
Yeah,
Stop. I want to make sure that they didn't fly through the air and land on the water. Y'all actually fast forward a little bit more, because right before that, she said something about, did they have an opportunity to say a prayer?
Say their prayers.
Bitch, if they had time to pray, he had time to pivot and not ram straight into a damn jet.
It's the disconnected delusion for me. Like this dissonance that they have with reality. You know what I mean? Like, there was no pain, right? In what world would
I'm sorry, a helicopter, a plane on its descent, a helicopter flies into him. that causes an explosion. And well, I just want to make sure that they didn't fly through the air and hit the water. According to one report, they found a section of the plane of 27 people still in their seats. So yeah, Ainsley, they hit the fucking water.
It's, Roland, I mean, what we saw there, of course, is DEI.
Actually, here's why I don't use that, because that's how they use it. That's white privilege.
No, that's what I mean. Whiteness is the ultimate DEI. In other words, the only qualification you have is white. And that has been the case for 500 years. And that's exactly what I meant by that. You know, while we were on the air, I got word, and I guess, you know, because I'm not really on social media.
Yeah, I know what you, go ahead.
Well, I got word that Kia Duggins, who was set to be my colleague at Howard over at the Howard University School of Law, was among those who lost her life. And to ask whether or not there was pain, or did you have to say your prayers, that type of stupidity is only suborned in a society where you get not a half pass, not a quarter pass, but a whole pass. And I know you saw Trump sitting in the Oval Office when the reporter asked him today, do you have a plan to go visit the site? And he's like, yeah, what, the water? The water? No. I mean, what, you want me to go swimming? With a smirk on his face. The only way you get, if you said that, they would run you out of the country. You understand? If that had been a black woman sitting there saying that, I can only imagine the vitriol that they received. But more importantly, Professor Duggins and everyone, those children who the gymnasts, I mean, even Nancy Kerrigan, and for God's sake, what's the woman that hit her with the head that hit put on her?
Tonya Harding.
Sonia Harding, even they had statements today. Everybody is in solidarity with feeling the pain of these families, and this person sits up and starts talking about prayers and hitting the water, and still has a job. In fact, you might look around, and if this Junior Huckabee, who worked for Huckabee apparently for 3 years, if she doesn't work out as press secretary, hell, that she might be the next damn White House press secretary. We are past any idea that we can somehow reason with people for whom the defining element of their existence is their whiteness. You can't do that. That's irrational.
I told y'all these people are crazy and stupid, and they're absolutely nonsensical, and they're not smart.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.
I received a text message today from a movement leader, a committed activist, somebody who has put their life on the line. And the person tweeted me and they said, I need you to get me together. I'm feeling discouraged, wanting to cry. The person said, and this is how I responded. I responded by saying, Fanny got hit in the head with a hammer but kept moving. I said, John Lewis had his head split open but kept fighting. I said, Medgar was gunned down in his driveway, but Murley never gave up. Mother Emanuel was burned down to the ground by the racists, but it was rebuilt. A.J. Smitherman had his paper destroyed in the Tulsa race riot, but he fled to Buffalo and opened another black newspaper. In this moment, freedom fighters have to give our people hope. They want to be led. This is where they are needed the most. Response was, you're right. We've been through and through. I know it's just overwhelming. The ignorance online is really bothering me. I have to stop paying attention to them and stay straight ahead. So for those of you who don't get that, maybe some of y'all are so holy you can understand this in biblical terms. And there are a lot of people, and I've gotten text messages, I've gotten phone calls, I've gotten emails, I've gotten people who I know very well, people who have been protesting, people who have been organizing, people who have been mobilizing, and they've been like, Roland, I'm tired. You heard Nola say earlier, I almost didn't come on here. I'm sick and I'm tired. Folk talk about being depressed. They talk about what they're going through. They talk about, I just can't handle it. This is just too much. This is overwhelming. When is this all going to end? And on and on and on. And y'all heard me say on this show that praise the Lord, the ancestors never gave up. Praise the Lord that the ancestors fought through those moments, but they still said, you know what? We got to keep swinging. So I had to explain something biblical to the person who texted me. And I'm not going to tell you if it's a man or a woman, but I'm just telling you, this is what I said to them. What they are experiencing is no different than what the prophet Nehemiah experienced. Nehemiah was concerned about the people of Israel because he had heard that the wall that protected them had crumbled. It was so bad that the king said, Nehemiah was wrong. And Nehemiah told him what was wrong. And he said, well, go check on your people. Nehemiah then went to go check on the people. And then he discovered the destruction of the wall that was around the people. So Nehemiah surveyed the destruction, came up with a God-inspired plan of action, and then went to the people and then told the people what the plan is. Let me say it again. Nehemiah, depressed, despondent, examines the destruction, prays on it, comes up with a plan, goes to the people, and then explains what the plan of action is. The people's response to Nehemiah was, let us rebuild. And they begin to rebuild. And as they begin to rebuild, the haters begin to speak. You can go read Nehemiah 2, 3, 4. You go see where the haters end there. And the haters said, y'all can't rebuild this wall. The haters said, y'all can't win back the White House. The haters said, y'all can't defeat them. But Nehemiah said, y'all, ignore the haters and keep building. Then the haters were like, oh, y'all are making progress with rebuilding that wall. And then all of a sudden, the haters then said, oh no, we got to stop them from rebuilding the wall. So the haters began to attack them. And Nehemiah said, I need y'all to keep one hand on your weapon and keep your other hand building. It's literally what he said. What ends up happening? The people then actually rebuild the wall. Now remember, the wall provided protection to those who were inside. But what I love about when you read Nehemiah is that they actually list all the people who did the work. If you go through Nehemiah, they list by name. These people built this portion of the gate. These people built this portion of the gate. These people built this portion of the gate. And see, what I love about the plan of action was Nehemiah said, if you live on the north side, don't you worry about who's building on the south side. I need you to focus on building just on the north side. Because there's a whole lot of us right now who are in Charlotte and Houston and who are in Monroe and who are in Miami. And we so worried about who's doing what in Oakland, in LA, and San Francisco, as opposed to we ain't even paying attention to what's happening in our city, in our neighborhood, on our block, on our street, in our home. The people who did the work in rebuilding the wall had their names mentioned, and they will be known for eternity because they didn't punk out. What am I saying? You might be depressed, despondent, upset, angry, mad, inconsolable that these idiots are in the White House, that they control the House, they control the Senate, they're going to be able to appoint federal judges. You're literally saying, oh my God, the institutions that we have, these people have no guardrails. What you're actually saying is that the wall of protection has crumbled. So what is needed? We discussed this last night with Tiffany Dean Lofton. This is a moment that requires modern day Nehemiahs. This is a moment that requires modern day Nehemiahs to inspect the destruction around us, then begin to pray to God. If you really want to go to Habakkuk chapter 2, write the vision down, make it plain, then wait. You go read that as well. So this requires modern day Nehemiahs to inspect the destruction, communicate with God, come up with a plan, and then take it to the people. See, I saw some of y'all comments in the chat. Y'all were like, why is he pressing Nina Turner so much? Because that's called articulating the plan to the people so the people can say, let us boycott. Let us rebuild. So in this moment, the challenge to black leadership, which Frank Ski talked about in his video, the challenge to black leadership is, are you a modern day Nehemiah? Are you surveying the destruction? Are you then crafting a plan of action? And are then you coming to the people to say, let us rebuild? And then will the people actually stand with you? Because there's a whole lot of people who are more like the haters who are saying, y'all cannot rebuild that wall. There are people who are saying, y'all can't mobilize and organize. Y'all can't get folks out to vote. Y'all can't raise money. Y'all can't do any of this. That's what the haters are saying. And the problem is when too many Nehemiahs are listening to the haters and they don't have their focus on the folks building, then your focus is misplaced. So I said to this person, I need you to stop listening to the haters. In our chat room right now are haters hating on me in the chat. Do you know why I don't care? Because I'm not on their YouTube channel, they on mine. Yikes! See, when you have built something, the haters gonna show up to throw stuff at you. And your response is, in the words of Della Reese from Harlem Nights, kiss my entire ass. Because I don't care. You can't waste your time with haters. You can't waste your time with online trolls. And you can't waste your time with people who do not want to help build. If we are going to deal with the craziness that is already confronting us, then what we have to do, some of us need to go off, take a respite, take a vacation, go away, do a sabbatical. I'm gonna help y'all to how do you navigate this here. Folks were blowing me up after 11 a.m. Are you watching this? No, I'm not. What are you doing? I'll see it later. But I'm not talking to you right now. Because what was the point of me getting mad and pissed off at 11 a.m. when I don't go live till 6 p.m.? So now for 7 hours, I'm carrying that bullshit around, and now your stress levels are going up. So I said no. So I told this person, get off social media. If you see some bullshit, move past it. And then I said, I was reading Bill Russell's book while I was working out on the treadmill. I then put it down. I had the music going. I had my Vibes mid-tempo playlist going to allow me just to think and process and not read tweets, not read text messages, not take phone calls, but allow me to settle my spirit. And then when I finished working out, had my meal, got ready to come to the office to do what I do. You have to create a plan of action that puts you in a position where you are not stressed and you are not losing your mind. And you're going to have to even tell, listen, my daddy called me. Can you believe this? No, Daddy, I didn't see it. I was respectful. I listened to my daddy, but I wasn't actually trying to have a conversation about what Trump had to say, because I knew what I was going to have to do 7 hours later. And I get it. I get it. And I appreciate my dad calling. And I appreciate my dad texting. But in order for you to deal with what's happening, let me help y'all. He going to be in there for another 207 weeks. And so you have to create your own personal, what y'all call it? Not self-healing. What's that phrase y'all use?
Self-care.
Yeah, you got to figure out your own self-care.
Yes, sir.
But the most important thing that you have to figure out is you cannot allow other people's distress to drive your stress, because their distress and your stress prevents you from thinking and coming up with a visionary plan. This is not a moment that is new to black people.
No.
I saw this clip of a preacher from Abyssinian Baptist Church. Do understand, Abyssinian Baptist Church, historic church in Harlem. Adam Clayton Powell, Congressman Adam Clayton Powell was the pastor. But not only that, the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a part of the group who had resolved to kill Hitler because of how evil he was. Are y'all aware that Dietrich Bonhoeffer actually studied black liberation theology at Abyssinian Baptist Church? Yes, he did. This is what the preacher dropped on the congregation on Sunday.
I want you to know today that as we are launching out and as we are speaking truth to power, the first thing I want you to know that this battle is not solely ours, but this battle is also the Lord's too. You see, when you look here in this text and you look at what this scripture shares with us in Deuteronomy, as Moses is speaking to the children of Israel, he's reminding them that this battle is not solely theirs, but it's also the Lord's. That's why he tells them to be strong. That's why he tells them to be courageous. That's why he tells them not to be discouraged. That's why he tells them not to be afraid. It's because he wants them to know that this is also the Lord's battle too. Are we tired? Yes. Are we angry? Yes. Are we exhausted? Yes. Are we frustrated? Yes. Are we weary? Yes. Are we outraged? Yes. Are we determined? Yes. Are we resolute? Yes. Are we scared? Hell no. Hell no. We're black people. We're people of color. I ain't afraid of you. I'll take you out. Hell no. We are not afraid. We are not scared. We are not scared because we've been here before. This is not new to us. This is not our first trip around the sun. No, we've seen all these schemes. We've seen all of your tricks. And I want you to know that what goes around also comes around. Have I got any warriors in here today? Have I got any Martin Delaney's in here today? Have I got any Frederick Douglasses in here today? Have I got any Harry Tubmans in here today? Have I got any Sojourner Truths in here today? Have I got any fighters in here today? We ain't scared. You see, it's in our DNA that we are survivors. It's in our DNA that we are overcomers. It's in our DNA that we are resistors. It's in our DNA that we are defiers. It's in our DNA that we are change makers. It's in our DNA that we are revolutionaries. It's in our DNA that we are prayer warriors. It's in our DNA that we are activists and challengers, liberators and perseverers, prevailers and conquerors, and America's greatest nightmare. No, we ain't scared.
That was Pastor Kevin Johnson. This is a moment where prophetic voices, the Nehemiahs, stand up, but we also need the people to commit to say, we will rebuild. Final comments? I'll start with you, Reese.
I wouldn't dare follow that to try to act like I can preach a sermon, so I'll just say amen. That's it, amen.
Nola?
All of that touched a lot of, hit a lot of the right notes for me. I definitely, my concept of Christianity and religion is built around liberation theology from a Catholic perspective. So for me, social justice, standing up, I always joke and say that I know I have at least about 15 good angry slaves living inside of me. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, which is why I'm sitting here tonight. Even though my body hurts, my brain hurts, because there's so many people pulling at you. They want your ideas. They want to organize. And, you take all that into your body. And so while I'm thinking mentally, oh, I'm strong, I got this, my body is telling me, no, you need to slow down a little bit. But tonight, after I do this show tonight, I am going to take a few days because my body is telling me, sis, you do need to slow down because I need to be ready for the fights that lay ahead.
Greg?
Yes, sir. 1959, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote an essay called Africa and China. He had spent time with Mao Zedong. Of course, Du Bois had traveled the world by then. He only had another about 4 years to live, but he was approaching his 90th year. Actually, he's 91. And he said, among other things, Africa learned from China. He wasn't just talking to the African continent. He was talking to African people. We are the first humans on the planet. This is our little corner of a cosmic existence that is infinite and eternal. Right now in China, as they unleashed an AI that has embarrassed these white trillionaires and left them scrambling and sent their stock market nosediving for a moment before they recovered with bluster and bravado temporarily, the Chinese are not experiencing panic because they are not just a country, they are a civilization. And they experience even as we just passed the Lunar New Year yesterday, they're experiencing the rise and fall of the West as a temporary condition. Africa learned from China. Africans learned from China. We gave the world the faith tradition, the spiritual tradition that birthed the traditions that birthed what we just heard. First with Judaism, then Christianity, then Islam, the Abrahamic faith traditions, which are only a speck or a small extension of the broad spiritual traditions we have. The ancient Egyptians had a concept that they called ma'at, realizing that all of these things we call religions are pale attempts by human beings to comprehend something that is beyond our comprehension, even as we are part of it. But the Egyptians would say that everything that is always has been. And the things that we experience as tragedies and the things that we experience as painful and the things we experience as somehow irrevocable or inevitable are merely iterations of something that is always balanced. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, they're temporary irritants. They are our wayward children, descended from those Africans who walked out of Africa millennia ago, adapted to other circumstances, and came back into Africa somehow with their minds left and gone. We will not only survive you, we will transcend you. And as long as we remember that we were the first, we gave birth to everyone else, and we will be here after everybody else is gone, we can retain the focus, as Sheikh Anta Diop would say, the calmness to accept the facts as they are, draw on our long memory, not the one that begins with chains, but the ones that begins with the first humans on the planet. And out of that, the solutions we bring will be the solutions that save not only us, but everybody else.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.